So with recent news with Shams tweeting out how Paul George is going to be out for the season due to injections in his left knee and left adductor, it's been crazy for the Sixers. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about Paul George and what his future is going to be like in the NBA with the Sixers and all of that. So before we get into the video, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff, and let's get into it now. So before we get started, let's do a little background on what basically happened with Paul George. So Shams actually tweeted out a follow-up tweet saying, George spent the past week consulting with doctors on the best treatment options. The 34-year-old suffered 2 hyperextensions in his knee in October and November, a finger tendon injury in January, and dealt with a growing alignment. I'm not really sure what that is, but he dealt with that within the recent weeks, and he's played 41 games. So with Paul George being paid all that money from the Sixers and only playing 41 games for the whole season, let alone them being the 11th, 12th seed, they kind of been roaming around that range. It's not been very good for the Sixers recently, and just in general, because their future does not look good with Embiid out. Maxi's missing a lot of games now, and Paul George is out for the season as well. So it's just all that is not looking good for the Sixers right now. And looking at the game injury report from a few days ago against the Pacers, the Philadelphia injuries were not even on the full screen. It was literally, you had to scroll to see how many people on their team was injured. It's insane. And honestly, if the Mavericks weren't dealing with all their injuries, I would think this is like a once in a decade type of thing. But you know, the Mavericks are also having their own issues too. So that's different. That's a different video at all. But the Sixers are having a horrible time too. And the injury situation in Philadelphia has gotten so bad that the NBA actually has launched investigations into the 76ers about Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and Paul George missing games. But I mean, it's looking like it's serious for Paul George and Joel Embiid. Maxey, they could just be, sitting him out. But I mean, Embiid's been just absolutely screwed with injuries. Paul George also, not as bad as Embiid, but still pretty bad. So I don't really doubt that those two are injured. But Maxey, they definitely might be resting him a little bit extra in these games. Because, why would you play Maxey? He's your future of the team. You don't want to, get him injured. He's not really going to make an All-NBA team or any awards. So might as well just sit him, get him ready for next season. And the part that scares me the most about Paul George is a tweet from Bobby Marks. And it says, Paul George will finish the season playing the fewest games since his 2021-2022 season, and it is the 5th time in 6 years he has played fewer than 60 games. He will turn 35 in May and is owed $162 million over the next 3 years. Not a 4 or 5 year contract, the next 3 years. That's insane for someone who can't even see on the court more than 42 games. So, I don't know, man. He's averaging like 16 this season. It's just a bad position for the Sixers, a bad position for Paul George too, because I'm a Paul George fan personally. I like him. I like the way he plays. I like how he's a big forward who can dribble, pull up, take his own shot. I love his game, but just seeing him injured, not really being into it, like obviously he stopped doing the podcast, but that was an issue before. Can't being able to stay on the court. He's 35 and he's getting paid that much. I mean, you can't blame him, to be honest. I mean, if you had $162 million on the table, you would accept it. But for the Sixers, man, it's just rough. And now let's get into the main point of this video, as we got a tweet from NBA Central saying the Philadelphia 76ers will try to trade Paul George this summer. And this is per Amico Hoops. Correct me if I got that name wrong, but I mean, it seems like a credible source, and I don't blame the Sixers for trying to trade Paul George this summer. I think they would have been better off trying to trade him before the trade deadline, because he's been getting a lot of more hate since the All-Star break. And honestly, I don't really know who would want to take him now after this season and just his contract in general. Because to be fair, before the offseason or when the offseason was happening, that contract wasn't horrible. It was a little bit of an overpay in people's eyes, but it wasn't as bad as it is looked at now. And the fact that he's getting older, he can't stay on the court, it's going to be really hard for the Sixers to move this guy. And you might just need to, keep him, and hopefully he gets his value up next season, because I'm not really sure you could get a lot from Paul George. And even if you do, you could be having to throw in a pick or something, which, God forbid, it's just hard to hear that, because Paul George is he's still an all-star in my mind, and having to salary dump him possibly, that just isn't a good look. And I'm not going to really go in too deep about which teams could possibly take him, because, when the offseason comes, there's a lot of teams that are going to have more salary more salary cap. So I'm not going to really have a good gauge on that. But just off the top of my dome, I'm thinking like the Raptors. They have RJ Barrett contract. They have some other contracts. If they want to free up some, or if they just want to take on a big contract or someone who could possibly provide a spark, maybe. I'm just not really sure. Because at this point, his value is not very high, Paul George. And honestly, it might be more lower than we think, because teams might not want to take on that contract, especially because it has 3 more years left. And maybe the Sixers can take advantage of a contender that's very desperate. Maybe the Mavericks, if they're really desperate, they could trade for Paul George for a cheap price. Who really knows there? Maybe the Suns too. Who knows what's going to happen with the Suns? The Suns have made some bad trades in the past. Even the Timberwolves, maybe another scorer alongside Ant. I'm not really for certain on this, but I'm just trying to think of teams that aren't like too tied into their core and have some like big contracts that they could trade for Paul George. However, even besides Paul George, I think the Sixers need to go in a full rebuild. Keep Maxey, keep McCain, keep Grimes. Grimes has been hooping. Re-sign Grimes. I think his contract expires. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Grimes' contract expires. So maybe build around Maxey, Grimes, and McCain if Grimes keeps it up. That's not a horrible future. Maybe try to get some first-round picks. You're going to get a lot of first-round picks for Joel. I promise that. Paul George, you probably will get something. Maybe, hopefully. But even just getting Paul George off the roster, freeing up cap space, that could be huge for the Sixers too. But their future is not that bad. It's not worse than the Suns, in my opinion. It's not worse than the Mavericks. So the Mavericks don't do anything soon. It's just, I think they just need to make the right moves. And we got to hope that, you know, their GM does the right stuff. But yeah, man, that's it for me. Let me know in the comments what you guys think on this topic. Maybe it's an issue. I don't even know, man. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Like the video, subscribe, like I said before, you know, comment. That helps me a lot. All that stuff helps my algorithm. We're trying to go grind as much as we can. And yeah, man, we out.